Welcome to the Lazy CEO Podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-size companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another Lazy CEO podcast where we try to help entrepreneurs learn how to get more done in less time and get great results. I'm Jim Schleckser. I'm your host and the founder of the CEO Project. Well, today you get me, and I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is business models. And yeah, I do talk about these in my book, Great CEOs Are Lazy. And if anybody's interested in the first chapter of that, we can certainly get it to you. Send us a note at jim@theceoproject.com, and we will get you the first chapter to take a look at, which talks about this a little bit. But anyway, I think of like business model as gravity. And, that sounds like a weird comparison, but think about it this way. If you were in an area or on a planet that had really, really heavy gravity, high gravity, it's hard to get up off the ground, right? Compare that to the moon, maybe with very low gravity. It's very easy to get off the ground. And that is really what business model is. A really good business model makes it easier, relatively speaking, to get up off the ground, to get growth, to get revenue, to serve more clients. A bad business model is like heavy gravity. You can work like crazy. You can work the same amount as in a low gravity environment, and you don't get as much progress. You get kind of stuck. It's hard to grow. It's hard to get off the ground, hard to make profit, hard to grow revenue. So there is no overcoming a bad business model. Like, you can work hard against it. You can be smart. You can kill yourself working 80 hours a week and you'll make some progress. But geez, given the option of a low gravity versus a high gravity environment, meaning a good business model versus a bad business model, I'd vote for a good business model, because why work so darn hard? Or at least for the amount of work you put in, you get better returns, you and everybody around you. So business model, the value of business model cannot be understated. And people go, well, there's always a way around it. I'm going to tell you there probably isn't, except to recreate your business model. So the first thing to know and consider with your business model is, how do we compete? Like, how are we going to win? And there's all kinds of models out there of, Porter's 5 forces and others. But one of the ones we like is sort of a basis of competition. I think this was from Brian Tracy, actually. And it really says there's 3 ways to compete. You can either be the low cost provider. Generally speaking, you have to be the highest market share to be low cost, right? In other words, volume gets you to the point of having the lowest cost. Now, by the way, that is different than having the lowest price. Price and cost are not related. They are, in that the hope that the price is higher than the cost. You sure want to do that. But just because I got the lowest cost doesn't mean I have to drop my prices. I want to get what the market will give me, given my basis of competition. Maybe I'll be just a squeak underneath everybody. So imagine you were 30% cheaper in your production of product or service than everybody else. Would you immediately offer the product at 30% less than everybody else? I wouldn't. I might offer it at 10% less and put all the rest in my pocket, or use it to hire great people or whatever. So price is one, or cost is one. The second is innovation. And, look, all of these areas, we innovate. We innovate around reducing costs. We innovate around better, all of that. But here we're talking specifically about product or service innovation. So the latest, coolest, newest thinking, the latest, coolest, neatest new box, you're going to get that from these kinds of companies. So who looks like this? Google, OpenAI. On the services side, probably McKinsey. They're probably leading, bleeding edge thinkers. And so if you want the latest, coolest stuff, you go to McKinsey. Why does that work? Because they're going to have to spend a lot of money in development of the product and the service, a lot of subject matter expertise, a big R&D department in the case of a product development, and they might spend as much as 20% of revenue on product development. But because they're first to market, they get premium price, and so the whole strategy is get there first, spend the money to be there first, get premium price in the market. Now, I'll say there is a viable number two position, which is counterpuncher. And so what you do is you draft behind the number one player who's going to invest millions and millions and millions of dollars in research and development, figure out the new product. But honestly, once you know somebody can do it, it's easy to copy it. And so what they do is they wait for number one to come out with a product or service, see that it's successful, very quickly imitate them or imitation it with their own modifications to make it theirs. So number two is not a bad strategy because you still are, relatively speaking, skimming on profit or price, right? You're still riding that early adopter price point, but your costs to develop it are lower because you're counterpunching, you're not originating. And so that's a real viable strategy. It's, people feel like, well, that's kind of icky. I want to be number one in the market and all. Yeah, I got it. But you can make a lot of money being number two. And there are lots of companies that use exactly that strategy, and they are excellent number twos to market. And that's fine too. So innovation of product is really a big one. And then the third one is customer intimacy. It's your deep, deep understanding of your customer problems in a way that you understand and can solve the problems better than they can. And literally we'll do anything to solve a problem in this space. An example here is we have a member we work with that is involved in multifamily housing. And originally they did debt collection. So people that weren't paying their rent, they'd help collect the rent from those people. But what they figured out that this is actually a bigger issue. This is what they call, and the hospitals already figured this out, revenue cycle management, which is everything from onboarding a client to getting their regular payments to, if they're a little bit late, reminding them, to if they're a lot bit late, maybe getting them a short-term loan, all the way out to debt collection. Debt collection is the end of and even evictions, frankly, is way at the end of the funnel. So they're trying to now move to a more complete revenue cycle management model away from just debt. And why do they do that? Because they said, by the time it gets to debt collection, my gosh, all kinds of other things went wrong to get us here. So what if we helped our customers get more revenue, keep their clients in their apartments and their leased locations with other services around it to manage their revenue more effectively? So they're solving a much bigger problem, and it comes from deep insight of the customer. Frankly, the customers didn't even know they wanted this. So they're now educating customers on this bigger revenue cycle management concept, and they're winning everything because nobody else thinks like this. So it's customer intimate, and in this case, first to market on the service, and it has cost them a bit of money to get there. So that's, and a customer intimate, if they said, hey, we need this other little thing around revenue management, they'd do it. They would do it because they want to wrap their arms around that customer. So customer intimate players wrap their arms around the customer and try to take as many dollars by solving as many problems as they can off of a single customer or a collection of customers. I ran a business before that sold to the ILECs, Verizon and AT&T, some of the big telephone companies. And in this particular area that we operated, which was maintenance, we would do anything for them. Software, hardware, people, anything they needed to try to solve that problem, we were in. They'd pay us for it, obviously, because we didn't want anybody else to get into that space. We wanted to own it and dominate it for a couple of customers. And so the market effectively was like 4 customers. And we really didn't do business with a lot of other people, but it was a very, very good and successful business on a limited number of customers. There's a company that's been acquired, but it was called Nipro. And what they did was exactly this on little teeny weeny plastic parts, highly precision, teeny weeny plastic parts, like you'd see in an old inkjet, in an inkjet printer or something like that, or medical devices. And they identified, I think they had 40 customers. And they said, here's the deal. You give us all of your work for these itty bitty little teeny plastic parts. Give us a 5-year contract, and we will build a plant right next door to your plant that will operate. And we'll make all those itty bitty little tiny plastic parts and sell, and just basically use a cart or a truck to bring them over to your place. We'll be like an extension of your business. But you don't want to be in this business of molding stuff. You want to be designing, marketing, doing all the things that you're great at. And so it was genius in terms of a business process outsource, and they grew to a very big company. They've been acquired subsequently, but the model was really, really, really smart. So that's customer intimacy. Now, cost, innovation, customer intimacy. You've got to pick one. You can't be good at 2. You've got to pick one. And you've got to be, and the reason why is because everything else in the organization has to line up around that point of competitive advantage, or you won't be very good at it. So, the example here on cost is Southwest Airlines. Everything Southwest does is about taking cost out of the system. And they figured out there's only one thing that matters in the airplane business, which is when the planes are in the air, well, two, planes are in the air and the planes are full, we make money. So everything they do is about getting the plane in the air as fast as they can and making sure it's as full as they can. So all the planes they fly are the same. So training their flight crews is cheaper, training their flight attendants are cheaper, their maintenance is cheaper, their spare parts inventory is smaller. They don't have to train anybody how to deal with the planes because they all know. When you start to get off of a Southwest flight, the flight attendants start cleaning the plane from the front as people get off so that they can refill the plane and get it back in the air, because when it's in the air, it makes money. They've historically thought that this ABC, everybody kind of scrum to find your seats, is the fastest technique to load a plane. I think they're questioning that at the moment, but if there was a faster way to load a plane, they would begin to do it that way, because it's all about getting the plane back in the air as full and fast as they possibly can. The people they hire are not real expensive people. So the people you hire, the processes you use, your information systems, your methodologies, your SOPs are all lined up around being low cost. Google, for example, Innovator, they hire really expensive, super smart people, right? You mean, this is where the really smart computer science type people go to. And they don't have any problem paying them a lot of money. And they give them time to innovate and develop products. They spend way over 20% on product development to come up with new cool stuff that doesn't exist right now. Now they've got a search engine and advertising model that pays for a lot of bills, which is great. That was their first innovation, but they're innovating in a huge number of areas. And so expensive people, fancy lunchroom, we'll bring sushi to your desk. We'll make sure that maximize your hours. We want you to feel good. We want you to be super productive. You want to work till midnight? We're all in on that. And a very, very high performance, high expectation environment designed to build unique, cool products that can make a lot of money. And so a totally different culture. It's not cost-based. Like, I'm not going to say they don't care about costs, but they don't care about costs pretty much, right? Not compared to Southwest, where they go, no peanuts for you, right? 2 bags of peanuts, forget it, right? That doesn't happen at Google. So very different cultural model of how they do it. And then just to pick on customer intimacy, Ritz-Carlton is a customer intimate brand. They really know their clients. They make them feel at home. And if you look at their motto of how they deal with people, it's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And so that says, I will do whatever I have to treat you like a lady or gentleman. And I demand and should get the respect of being a lady or gentleman. And everybody acts exactly that way. And so people have these amazing experiences, these amazing customer service experiences when they go to Ritz-Carlton. Everything's like the computer systems are lined up that way. The technology's lined up that way. Everything's lined up around great customer experience or customer intimacy. So you got to understand your basis of competition and align your talents and your system to it. And that's the only way you're going to be the best in the world at it, meaning you're so good that people want to come and work with you. Now, alongside that, though, is the offer. And one of the things we talk around in business model is having an amazing offer, an offer that is so good that people would be crazy to say no to it. I'll give you 2 that we've recently run into. One is a member that we work with in the CEO project, and he has developed an offer. He helps people raise money in the nonprofit space. This software service costs, some money a year, 50, 60, 70,000 bucks a year, let's say. And his offer is, if I don't help you raise 10 times the cost of the product in more donations than you made before, then it's free. So either you get $700,000 of new money you never would have gotten in donations to support your cause, your effort, and so forth, or the software is free. Well, geez, you'd have to be nuts to say no to that offer. And so consequently, they're able to gain a lot of interesting clients because the offer is so compelling. And again, you'd be crazy to say no. Another one we ran into, this is in the energy conservation space. There's a company in Connecticut that will go into your facility and say, all right, we've analyzed your energy. We're going to install all of the hardware to reduce your energy, to convert part of your power to solar, change your lights out, all the stuff we have to do to reduce your energy footprint. We're going to get a rebate from the power company for doing that, which covers part of the cost. And the rest of the cost, we're going to take half of the savings that we create. So if we don't create any savings, no money. There's no money up front for you because that's paid for by the power company. No money on the downstream unless we save you money. And even then, we only get half of what we save you and you get the other half. Well, you'd be nuts to say no to these guys, right? You go, well, that sounds pretty good. Sounds like free money to me. Like all I got to do is change out some stuff and put solar panels on the roof and you're going to do it all. And I don't have to do anything except collect checks. And they go, yeah, that's it. They go, done. So an amazing, compelling offer that they've got in place. And they are, not surprisingly, growing like, weeds. They're doing great. They cannot add clients fast enough because the offer is that compelling. So that's sort of the basis of competition. I mean, I'll give you just one other line of thinking here. And this comes from a general by the name of Clausewitz. It's a Prussian general. And he talked about the strategy of war, but there's a later book that people took those ideas and they applied them to marketing. So it goes like this. Number one in a market plays defense. So if you're up on the top of the hill with a big army, to use the military, you get to play defense. Like I've already got the high ground. I've already got the big army. All I can do is lose from where I am. So I play defense. I don't have to play offense. I just have to knock everybody who's trying to take my position, keep them away from me, and then grow and maintain in my current position. So if you're number one in your market, even if it's a very small defined market, I'll give you an example. We have one member we work with that does services for neurosurgeons where they send electrical impulses through the body so the neurosurgeon knows that they're hitting the right parts of the brain without having to wake the person up. So they're still under anesthesia and you can know like, okay, that's the toe, that's the finger, that's the ear wiggle, that's whatever it is. And they know exactly what they're doing in the brain because of this system. It's a super niche market and these guys are dominating it. Super niche, not a big market, but they're number one. So they're playing defense. So anybody who comes up and gets a little position, they try to take them out or buy them or something else. So number one plays defense. Number two can actually attack number one. So if you're number two, a strong number two in particular, you can potentially try to attack number one directly. This is Coke and Pepsi, right? So this is Apple and Microsoft. They are directly attacking each other on business. Now there's other competitors in the mix now, but that's a little dated reference. But Coke and Pepsi's real. And there are some other players that take their position, but the big kahunas are those two. And they just beat each other all day long trying to move market share. I don't even know who number one and number two is now. They're kind of close, I think. So two can play. Now, number three in a market, you're the third market share position. You can flank, meaning what you have to do is go find an unprotected element of number one's market and go try to take it from them. So you can kind of run around the side and take a piece of their market. That's a flanking position. And so you never want to go straight at number one. You want to find a way to be differentiated from them. And you can compete with them on that basis. And many times they won't bother competing. Like, for example, let's say they're serving residences, all residences in the United States. And you go, you know what? We figured out a way to really, really well service people over 75 years old that are living by themselves. I'm making that up. And we are going to service those clients incredibly, incredibly well so that a number one is not going to spend the time to figure this out. We did. So that's a flanking maneuver to own one position. And then anybody below position three in a market is what they do. It's called find a foxhole and protect it. So you find a little teeny weeny part of the market. And my example of elderly in residence could fall in that category. You find a little teeny weeny market, you dig into your foxhole and you protect it like crazy. And hopefully what people think is number one is going to be interested in every market. And it turns out they're not. And we used to, when I was this telecom company I was running, we were pretty much number one market share. We called this the 40 chicken alligator problem. And a 40 chicken alligator problem is You get a little baby alligator and you give it a chicken and it grows, right? And then you need 2 chickens to make it grow. And then you need 4 chickens to make it grow, and 8 and 6. And before you know it, to get your alligator to grow in any interesting way, you got to find 40 chickens to feed your darn alligator. Well, once you get to a certain size, let's say you're a $200 million company, how interesting is a $2 million market? Not very interesting. They go, look, if it's not 10 or $20 million, we're not going to really go after it because it's just not worth our effort to go after it. And so there are lots of cool little $1, $2, $3, $5 million foxholes in a marketplace that, number one, will never ever get interested in because it's too darn small. So that's the strategy. Find something that's sort of below their radar and operate in that position, and make sure you don't poke the bear. Don't wake them up. It would be the other advice I'd give you. Don't do something that's going to make them crazy. So that's sort of, competitive position, and how to, the better you are here, the more clear you are about your basis of competition, the more aligned your systems and processes are, the better your offer is. Those are the elements of a good business model. Now, there are some other ones which are a little more financial, but super important as well. So the first one is recurring revenue. And I love recurring revenue. It's like my favorite thing in the whole world. And that, in the ideal environment, recurring revenue is contractually obliged revenue, meaning I show up January 1st and I know for sure I'm going to get X dollars in revenue. And these businesses are just way easier to grow. They're generally more profitable because you can manage costs effectively. And when you sell the business, it's worth more. People will pay more for a high recurring revenue business. So, and this is different than repeat revenue. No, we love repeat revenue too. It's better than, random. They get us when they get us. But you want to try to get higher switching costs when you don't have contracts. So contract is just increasing the switching costs. So if I have a contract with somebody, I can always find a way to get out of the contract or wait for it to end and then go somewhere else. It's not a forever deal. But there are other ways to increase switching costs to improve how recurring like your revenue. So one is, we've got your data. So for example, Salesforce probably doesn't need to sign long-term contracts because they've got your data. All your CRM data is in Salesforce. You could probably get it out of there, but oh my gosh, what a pain in the butt. A lot of other companies operate under this. Put your data with us. Don't worry, it's going to be safe. It does fall under the great lies of, so don't worry, this will only hurt a little bit, right? So when they have your data, they have implicitly developed a level of recurring revenue because the switching costs are high. So anything you can do to make your business sticky in a way that it is hard for people to leave is a win. I'll give you an example from the CEO peer group business, which we are in. Obviously, people learn a ton and they become better CEOs all over that, but also they become friends with the people in their group. And so they build this social network of respected, high quality people that they like hanging around. And that creates stickiness. They don't want to leave their buddies. They don't want to leave their friends. I mean, it happens, don't get me wrong, but it improves the stickiness of the business and therefore makes it more and more recurring revenue-like because it's sticky. But really what I like to think about is, how do I make my offer so compelling and interesting that it is remarkable? So this goes back to Seth Godin. He talks about purple cow, right? A bunch of cows isn't worthy of note. Nobody's going to comment on it. Nobody's going to remark on it. But if you saw a purple cow in the middle of a field, you'd be like, hey, I was driving through Connecticut and I saw this purple cow. It was crazy. Like, oh my, it was right there in the middle of the field. Purple cow, go figure. So the question is, how do you become a purple cow? Remarkable, worthy of remark. And that is important because so Disney's figured this out. Disney's so cool that you're going to tell people about it. And if you've ever met a Disney fan, I mean, they will tell you everything about there is to know about Disney. But here's what's really interesting about it. Grandparents cannot wait to bring their grandchildren to Disney. They want to be the ones that introduce their kids, their grandkids to that offer because it is remarkable. It's so interesting and different. I want to be the one that brings you to Disney. I want to be the one that shows it to you because it's worthy of remark. By the way, remarkability is the same as referability. If something is remarkable, it's referable. And so the question you got to ask yourself when you're designing sort of the customer experience here, and this is all about building a recurring revenue like model, is what would the customer say to a friend about my product? What would they say? Like if you go to DoubleTree hotels, and they're not particularly noteworthy, although they're decent hotels, but they always have warm chocolate chip cookies. And so you're going to comment on the warm chocolate chip cookies. Another one, and I didn't even know this was a design element, but when you go to CVS, what does everybody say about CVS? Oh my God, my receipt was the length of my arm. And now here's the question: do you think it really needs to be the length of your arm? Nope. They do that on purpose so you remark on it. If you go onto TikTok or Instagram and go CVS receipts, there'll be a million videos, free advertising for the cost of like 0.0001 cents a paper per person. I mean, it's crazy. So it doesn't have to be some insanely big thing. It can be small things to make the experience, and it may not even be correlated to the core product, right? Chocolate chip cookies in hotel rooms and receipts and a pharmacy don't really go together as core product, but it is part of the customer experience that makes it remarkable. And so remarkability ties to recurring revenue. The more remarkable you are, the more people want to come back to you, the more they want to bring people to you, which makes you referable as well. And maybe the last one in sort of recurring like is ease of doing business. So if you are super duper easy to do business with, people will keep coming back because it's easy, right? So why do I go to the same grocery store? Because it's convenient. I mean, they have no contract on me. I could go to any grocery store I want to, but that one happens to be convenient and I know the way it's laid out and I could change, but why would I? Amazon figured this out, right? They have analyzed your searching and the number of clicks required to buy a product and how to put things on subscription. And they're all about making it easy to do business with. Now you go, well, I could buy this fly rod somewhere else, but I'd have to then enter all my information and I got to give them my credit card and then they're going to email me forever. And or I'll go to Amazon, I'll pay $3 more and I'm done. Amazon wins because they're easy to do business with. And so that is a real factor. The easier you are to do business with, the better off you are. There was an article in the Harvard Business Review a number of years ago called Staple Yourself to Your Customer. And basically that is, as leaders, we never experience what customers experience. My example here is whenever I would have an IT problem when I was running my last company, 2 IT people would show up within 30 minutes to fix my IT problem. At one point I go, so guys, I got a question. Do you do this for everybody? And they go, oh, no way, man. Like, there's no way. Nobody gets 2 and we sure don't show up in 30 minutes, but it's you. I'm like, okay, so I'm breathing a different kind of air than everybody else in the company. So I have no understanding of their experience with our IT group. That was very intentional on their part, by the way. But also, if you use your own product, you're not experiencing what your customers are. So somehow you have to find a way to experience the 4 phone calls to return a product and the difficulty that you put your customers through. Because I guarantee that if you do that, run through that process like you're a new customer, you'll make changes. And you'll make it easier because you're like, why do we make them enter the data 2 times? That makes no sense. We should enter it once. So ease of doing business is a big one. Margin, can't beat margin. So the bigger your margin, the more flexibility you have. I tell people, raise your prices right now. And it's scary to raise prices, so we worry about losing customers. But there are very few markets that are so competitive that if I raise my prices 5, 6, 7, 8%, then I'm going to lose all my customers. There are very few sort of pure competition markets. There's always reason people stick with you. And some of that stickiness that I talked about allows you to get a little bit of price. So the stickier you are, the more pricing power you have. So move your prices up and improve your margin. And then maybe the last 2 are on capital intensity. Businesses that require a lot of capital to run, a lot of inventory or a lot of equipment are generally bad businesses compared to businesses, or less good. I shouldn't say bad because there's lots of them. They're less good businesses and ones that require less capital. Now, the good news is a lot of capital is a barrier to entry. Like if I'm going to start a business and and that business requires $10 million of machine tools, I kind of got a hard time starting that business unless I can find $10 million. So it does create a barrier to entry, but as an investment, as an owner, lots and lots of capital means you're not going to make a great return on your investment. We've looked at some businesses that were very capital intensive And the owner would have been better to take all of that cash, sell everything, take all that cash and put it in T-bills with no risk, and they would have made more money than running their business with all the risk around having a new business. And so you got to think, when you think about capital intensity, think about as an investor, not as an operator. Because and I'll give you an example. I had a member, when he was running his business, he said, inventory is good. You want to have a lot of inventory. Inventory is great because we can ship to customers fast. Well, he kind of stepped out into an owner role and brought in a new CEO. And boy, oh boy, did the story change. He goes, man, we got too much inventory. We need to turn that into cash so we can pay dividends. And so owners or investors look at inventory and assets as a liability, where an operator might look at it as an asset. And so we'd say lower capital intensity is better. And part of the reason why is the bottom line. So we fool ourselves a little bit when we talk about EBITDA. And Warren Buffett has said EBITDA is a fantasy number. We shouldn't even talk about it. But somehow we've convinced ourselves that EBITDA is a real number and it's important. But remember, earnings before depreciation, which is all the capital that I put into the business, interest, all the loans I had to get to run the business, and taxation. And so you're kind of fooling yourself that if I've got a really capital intensive business that requires a lot of loaned money to build inventory and whatnot, it's kind of a bad business. But EBITDA makes you think it's a good business because you don't see all that stuff. So we prefer, and this is Buffett's view too, which is free cash flow. In other words, how much cash is left at the end of the year? Real cash, a pile of cash. It's almost like shoebox accounting. We open the shoebox at the end of the year. How much cash is in the shoebox? Now, take two businesses. One that they both make $10 million of EBITDA, right? That number we love. But one has very, very little capital and no involved and no debt. Is a software business, let's say. So the $10 million of EBITDA turns into more or less $10 million of free cash flow, like real cash on the barrelhead. Another business that's super capital intensive, requires inventory and fancy machines. They create $10 million of EBITDA. They spend $5 million on new capital and $2 million building inventory to support the new clients they have. The free cash flow in that business would be $3 million. Well, gosh, I don't have a degree in mathematics, but I think I'd rather have the first business and not the second business, wouldn't you? And so free cash flow is a much better business measurement than EBITDA, even though the investment bankers have convinced us all to use EBITDA. Now, look, when you're selling your business and it's capital intensive, please, please, please use EBITDA. That's the best number you're ever going to show. And so far, everybody accepts it. But I'm telling you, if you really want a good business that's going to pay you, think about free cash flow. And that'll drive this question of why do we use so much capital? Why do we have so much inventory? Is there a way to do it better, cheaper, faster? And there always is. So that's a kind of a quick drive through business model. And in my book, Great CEOs Are Lazy, I talk a lot about this under the architect hat. Architect is the hat we wear when we are designing a business model and trying to come up with a better one. And I actually think I make the comment that you cannot spend too much time on business model, because go back to my original analogy. I want a low gravity planet where it doesn't take a lot of energy and effort to get up off the ground. That's a good business model, versus a high gravity environment where it takes lots of capital and there's no recurring revenue and it's very hard to grow those businesses. So that's business model. Be happy to talk to you about it. If you want to go into more depth, just reach out to us. If you'd like the first chapter of the book digitally, we're giving it away free. Just reach out to Jim at theceoproject.com and we'd be happy to send that right off to you. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time on the Lazy CEO Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.